I still remember the exact moment I realized I was in trouble. It wasn't when he first walked through our front door. It wasn't even when he started staying later and later after dinner. No, it was when I caught myself counting down the hours until Thursday evenings, when I knew he'd be sitting across from me at my own dining table, making me feel more alive than I had in years. When I set the table for 3 that evening in October, I thought it would be just another ordinary dinner with my husband David and his boss. I had no idea how one simple invitation would change everything I thought I knew about myself, my marriage, and the woman I thought I was. If you've ever found yourself in an unexpected situation that made you question everything you believed about love, loyalty, and desire, then you're in the right place. I'm about to share something that still keeps me awake at night, 3 years later. Hit that subscribe button and join our Tales of Lust family, because this story is going to take you places you never expected to go. Let me paint you a picture of my life back then. Picture a suburban home with cream-colored walls, family photos lined up perfectly on the mantle, and the kind of kitchen that smelled like vanilla candles and home-cooked meals. That was my world. Safe, predictable, comfortable. I was 34, married to David for 8 years, and I genuinely thought I had it all figured out. We had our routines, our weekend plans, our 5-year goals written out and stuck to the refrigerator with little magnetic hearts. David worked long hours as a project manager at a construction company, and I worked part-time at a local bookstore while keeping our home running like clockwork. Then came Marcus. David's boss was, how do I even describe him? He wasn't conventionally handsome in that obvious way that makes women turn their heads on the street. But there was something about him that drew you in. Maybe it was the way he listened when you spoke, like every word mattered. Maybe it was how he moved through the world with this quiet confidence that didn't need to announce itself. Or maybe it was simply that he saw me, really saw me, in a way I'd forgotten was possible. It started innocently enough. David mentioned that Marcus was going through a divorce, eating takeout every night, and seemed pretty lonely. Why don't we invite him for dinner? I suggested, because that's what good wives do, right? We take care of people. We nurture. We create warm spaces where people feel welcome. That first Thursday in October, Marcus arrived at 7 sharp with a bottle of wine and this shy smile that made him look younger than his 42 years. He complimented the roast, helped clear the dishes without being asked, and stayed until almost midnight talking about books, music, and dreams we'd all but forgotten we once had. Your wife is an incredible cook, he told David as he was leaving. But when he said it, his eyes were on me, and something in his voice made my stomach flutter in a way it hadn't in. God, I couldn't even remember how long. Same time next week? David asked, already planning ahead like he always did. And that's how it began. Thursday dinners became our thing. Week after week, Marcus would arrive at 7, stay until well past 10, and slowly, without any of us really noticing, he became part of our routine. Part of our lives. Part of my world. By the 3rd week, I found myself grocery shopping differently. Instead of just grabbing David's usual favorites, I'd wander through the store wondering what Marcus might like. Would he enjoy the herb-crusted salmon? Should I try that new dessert recipe I'd bookmarked? I started wearing different clothes on Thursdays. Nothing obvious, nothing that David would notice, but I'd choose the blue sweater that brought out my eyes, or the dress that made me feel confident and feminine. I told myself it was just about being a good hostess, but deep down, I knew I was lying. The conversations grew longer, deeper. While David would retreat to his home office after dinner to catch up on emails, Marcus and I would sit at the kitchen table, talking about everything and nothing. He asked about my childhood, my dreams, the novel I'd started writing years ago but never finished. He remembered details that even David forgot, like how I took my coffee, or that I was afraid of thunderstorms, or that I'd always wanted to visit Ireland. You light up when you talk about your writing, he said one evening, his voice soft in the dim kitchen light. When's the last time you worked on it? I couldn't remember. Somewhere between meal planning and laundry and being the perfect supportive wife, I'd lost pieces of myself I didn't even realize were missing. It was during our 6th dinner together that everything changed. I was in the kitchen, putting away leftovers, when Marcus appeared beside me with the last of the wine glasses. "Let me help," he said, reaching around me to place them in the sink. For just a moment, we were standing close enough that I could smell his cologne, feel the warmth radiating from his body. Our eyes met in the reflection of the kitchen window, and for a heartbeat that lasted forever, neither of us moved. That's when I knew I was in trouble. Real trouble. Because in that moment, standing in my own kitchen with my husband's voice drifting in from the next room, I wanted nothing more than to turn around and step into Marcus's arms. I wanted to know what his hands would feel like on my waist, what his lips would taste like, what it would be like to be held by someone who saw me as more than just a wife going through the motions. Instead, I stepped away, busying myself with wiping down counters that were already clean, my hands shaking just enough that I hoped he wouldn't notice. But he did notice. Marcus noticed everything. 3 weeks later, fate decided to test my resolve. October in our little town can be unpredictable, and that Thursday evening brought one of those sudden autumn storms that seem to come out of nowhere. The kind with lightning that makes you jump and thunder that rattles the windows. We were just finishing dessert when David's phone rang. Emergency at one of the job sites. Flooding, equipment at risk, all hands needed immediately. "I'm so sorry," David said, already reaching for his jacket. "Marcus, you don't mind staying until this passes, do you? I can't leave her alone in this weather. You know how she gets." And just like that, we were alone. I made coffee with trembling hands while Marcus moved around my kitchen like he belonged there, dimming the harsh overhead lights and lighting the candles I kept on the counter but rarely used. The storm raged outside, but inside, with just the two of us and the soft glow of candlelight, everything felt different. Intimate. Dangerous. We talked for hours. Really talked. About his failing marriage, about my growing loneliness, about the dreams we'd both put on hold for other people's happiness. He told me about the nights he lay awake thinking about our conversations, about how Thursday had become the day he looked forward to all week. "I think about you," he said finally, his voice barely above a whisper. "More than I should. More than is right." The confession hung in the air between us like the scent of the vanilla candles, sweet and intoxicating and impossible to ignore. I should have said something safe, something that would have pulled us back from the edge we were suddenly standing on. Instead, I heard myself say the words that would change everything. "I think about you too." It wasn't supposed to happen like this. I wasn't supposed to be the kind of woman who falls for her husband's boss, who counts down days until she can see a man who isn't her husband, who lies awake at night imagining different lives and different choices. But there I was, sitting across from Marcus in my own home, admitting to feelings I'd been trying to deny for weeks. The storm outside seemed to mirror the chaos in my chest, all that pent-up energy and electricity, with nowhere safe to go. "We can't," I whispered, but even as I said it, I was memorizing the way the candlelight played across his face, the way his eyes darkened when he looked at me. "I know," he said, "but that doesn't make it any less real." He reached across the table then, his fingers brushing mine so lightly it might have been an accident. But it wasn't. We both knew it wasn't. For a moment that stretched like an eternity, we sat there with our hands almost touching, both of us breathing like we'd been running, both of us knowing we were about to cross a line that would change everything. I could have pulled away. I should have pulled away. Instead, I let my fingers intertwine with his, and it felt like coming home and falling off a cliff at the same time. "This is crazy," I breathed. "Completely," he agreed, but his thumb was tracing circles on my palm, and I was already lost. The kiss, when it finally happened, was nothing like the passionate, desperate thing you see in movies. It was soft, tentative, filled with months of unspoken longing and the weight of everything we knew we were risking. It tasted like wine and regret and the sweetest kind of surrender. When we finally broke apart, both of us were shaking. That's when the guilt hit me like a physical blow. David's coffee mug was still sitting on the counter where he'd left it in his rush to get to the emergency. His jacket was hanging on the back of the chair. Family photos smiled at us from every surface, documenting 8 years of a life I was suddenly betraying with a single kiss. "I can't do this," I said, standing so quickly that my chair scraped against the floor. "I can't be this person." Marcus didn't try to stop me as I paced to the window, wrapping my arms around myself like I could physically hold myself together. The storm was beginning to calm, but inside me, everything was chaos. "I'm not asking you to be anyone you're not," he said quietly. "But I can't pretend I don't feel this. I can't pretend Thursday evenings don't mean everything to me." "They mean everything to me too," I admitted, the words tearing out of me. "And that's exactly why this has to stop." What happened next was the hardest thing I'd ever done. I told Marcus that he couldn't come to dinner anymore. That David would understand. Divorced people need space to rebuild their lives, right? It was perfectly reasonable. The look on his face nearly broke my resolve. But I thought about David, trusting and oblivious, working late to provide for us. I thought about the life I'd built, imperfect as it was. I thought about the woman I wanted to be and the woman I was becoming, and I knew I had to choose. "I'll always wonder," Marcus said as he gathered his coat to leave. "What if we'd been brave enough to see where this could go?" "Some things are better left as possibilities," I replied, though my heart was screaming that I was making the biggest mistake of my life. The next few months were agony. David never questioned the change in routine, never noticed that I seemed to be going through the motions of my life like an actress who'd forgotten her lines. Thursday evenings became just another night, but I still found myself setting the table for 3 out of habit, then removing the extra plate with hands that shook just a little. I threw myself into my writing, finally finishing that novel I'd abandoned years ago. It was a love story, of course, about 2 people who meet at the wrong time, in the wrong circumstances, and have to choose between desire and duty. My editor said it was my best work, that the emotion on every page felt raw and real. If only she knew why. 6 months later, Marcus called. He was moving across the country, taking a position with another company. He wanted to say goodbye. We met at a coffee shop downtown, safely public, safely neutral. He looked good, rested, hopeful, like a man who'd made peace with his choices. I hoped I looked the same, though I doubted it. "I don't regret that night," he said as we sat across from each other for what we both knew would be the last time. "I regret that we didn't have the courage to see what we could have been together." "We both made the right choice," I said, though part of me wasn't sure I believed it. "Did we?" he asked. "Or did we just make the safe choice?" 3 years later, I still don't have an answer to that question. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I'd been braver. If I'd followed my heart instead of my conscience. Would Marcus and I have found the kind of love that poets write about, or would we have destroyed each other and everyone around us in the process? I'll never know, and maybe that's for the best. Because some stories aren't meant to have endings. They're meant to live in that space between what was and what could have been, reminding us that we're all capable of feeling more than we ever imagined. My marriage to David survived, though it's different now. Quieter, maybe. More careful. I never told him about that night, about the kiss that changed everything and nothing at all. Some secrets are meant to be carried alone. But I learned something about myself in those few months that I'll never forget. I learned that even the most ordinary life can hold extraordinary moments of connection. I learned that love doesn't always arrive at convenient times or in acceptable packages. And I learned that sometimes the most powerful love stories are the ones that never get to be written. So here's my question for you. Was I wrong for feeling what I felt? Was I a coward for walking away, or was I protecting something more valuable than my own happiness? Share your thoughts in the comments below. I read every single one. And if this story touched something deep inside you, hit that like button and subscribe to Tales of Lust for more stories that explore the beautiful, complicated mess of human emotion. Because we're all just trying to figure out how to love and be loved, aren't we? Until next time, remember that every heart has secrets, and every secret has the power to change everything.